Hello, and thanks for it. This looks amazing, by the way. It's great. There I have my slides. Cool. So, hi, my name is Zoltan Kollin. My first name has some Turkish origin in it, but I'm coming from Hungary. I'm a UX director at Ustream, a company that IBM just acquired, so we are basically an IBM company now. And so I've been doing UX design jobs for more than 10 years now. And whenever people ask me what UX designers actually do or what's the purpose of being a UX designer, I usually say something like, we're working on to make sure that we're designing products that people love, or we are trying to make great products that people will love. And I think that's a good enough answer for outsiders. It pretty much explains what we do. But I think if you are working as UX designers, or you're working with UX designers, you probably know that this is not that simple. UX is not a one-man show. It's a team play. So probably the greatest UX challenge that we are facing every day is that we have to make compromises. We have coworkers, we have stakeholders, we have engineers to work with, we have marketing people, and so on. So probably the biggest UX challenge is making those compromises. Another great challenge is talk after lunch, but let's not talk about it now. So I think you all saw this diagram, and it was shown earlier this morning too. This diagram basically says that the UX and UX designers should consider our users' needs, obviously. We should consider business goals, and we should consider technology too. And I think this is kind of a cliche, but I think it's pretty true. And what I don't like about this visualization is that it suggests that all these dimensions are equal, and that this whole environment is static and is balanced. I think the case is not this. It's more like this or this. And it depends. It depends on the product you're working on. It depends on the project you're working on. It may be also different for your team. And I believe that all these dimensions are constantly changing. And then this makes the whole environment changing too. So let's see how these dimensions can evolve. Let's start with users. It's pretty simple. Here's an example. I think you all remember that a couple of years ago, all the touch interface, touchscreen interfaces looked pretty physical. And the reason for this is that it wasn't just a design trend. It wasn't just a visual guideline. It was designed so as to make people understand how touchscreens work. Because back then, the touch interface was a new technology for users. So actually, we had to make apps. We had to make a calendar app that looked like a physical calendar to make people understand what it is. We had to make physical buttons to make people understand that they can tap on those things. And everything looked pretty physical. We don't really use this style anymore, right? And not because it's not stylish anymore, but mainly because it's not required for users anymore. It doesn't really make sense from a usability standpoint, right? So people are changing. People learn how to use interfaces. And so visual design have to change too. Visual design and visual design guidelines have to follow the users' needs, the users' knowledge. And so what we're experiencing now is that in the UX and UI design field especially, we are simplifying things. And that's basically a good thing, right? Because we are removing unnecessary details. Everything is clean. Everything is simple. That's great. However, simplification can be harmful at times if you oversimplify things. Let me show you an example. This is actually the home button, the home icon on Amazon's Kindle devices, at least the evolution of the home icon. This is how it looked like, and then they started to simplify it, and right now they have the simplest version right now. And so the problem with this is that if you consider that the main purpose of an icon is to be understandable by users, If you remove details that are important for understanding the graphic itself, you're hurting usability. So if you oversimplify an icon, a common icon like a home button, you can actually hurt usability. So I really hope that Amazon is not going to keep on simplifying this icon because it's not going to be understandable anymore. And there's this famous quote that says the exact same thing. If you simplify things, that's a great thing to do, but you need to know exactly what is OK to remove and what are those parts that you shouldn't remove because it's just going to screw up things. So make sure that you don't oversimplify things. Let's talk about the devices that the users are using every day. If you worked as a web developer or web designer a couple of years ago, I guess the main challenge was that we as designers had to make sure that our designs worked in every major browser. And what today we have as challenge is that we as designers have to make sure that our designs and our products work the same way on every devices. And this is kind of a technological change here, but also we have to make sure that our products are accessible on every device because our users are using different devices. So it's actually our users' expectations to us to support all these devices. And I'd like to refer to what Vitaly was talking about this morning, is that because of this, we as designers have this small screen challenge right now. Users expect that everything should work the same way on every screen in the world, but it's hard. So we somehow need to find some strategies how to put everything onto a small screen. And there are some ways to do this. One is the easiest solution, like putting all the navigation behind the hamburger icon, and then you have to make sure that people understand that everything is behind the hamburger icon. You're hiding stuff. You can introduce some gestures to cover most of the functionality, but again, users have to learn how to use it because they don't see this. They have to memorize these things. Or you can be somewhat creative, and you can introduce icons. Icons actually work great on touch interfaces. You can save some space because an icon takes less space than words. And these work well, I guess. I mean, there are some common icons that users understand, like they understand the back button, they understand the search icon, and so on. So if it's a common action, you can use this. You're not hurting usability, probably. People are going to understand it. But what if you want to save some screen space, but you have some pretty complicated or pretty difficult functionality on your small screen? The bad news is that you have to use words. You have to use text labels to make sure that people understand it. Or what you can also do is come up with something pretty creative and create an icon like these. And what you see right now, these are actual icons from existing mobile apps and from different apps. And these icons don't have a label next to them. So it's actually a riddle. I have no idea what they do. And I'm pretty sure that most of the users don't have any clue either. I mean, I don't know what this can be. So if you're trying to save some space and you have to come up with something creative like this, please always use text labels next to such icons because otherwise you're using usability. Okay? And so this is the user part. And that's a connection between visual guidelines, visual trends, and user needs. Visual guidelines need to follow your users' needs and not the other way around. So you should never sacrifice usability. You should never sacrifice the needs of your users just because you want to follow guidelines and visual best practices. OK. Let's talk about business a little bit, because it sounds great that we as UX designers want to build great products that people will love. But at the end of the day, it's also good if those people actually pay for something, right? And so the great business challenge is you have to send your message to users. And probably the easiest way to send messages in the digital world is email. So here's some stat. Back in 2009, around 90 trillion emails were sent globally in the whole year. This is a huge number, but the interesting part is this. 81% of these emails were actually spams. And that was because businesses tried to abuse technology And because it was pretty cheap to send emails to people, spamming seemed like a good idea from the business perspective, right? But we, as UX people, know that spam is a distraction. Spam sucks for people. Fortunately, technology evolved since, and we have great spam filters. So according to Google, there's a very slight chance that you get spams in your inbox. So spam as a distraction is not there for your users anymore. And that's a great thing. However, we have other kind of distractions. Just think about it. You try to use your phone, you pull it out, and oftentimes what you see is something like this. Push notifications all the way. You need to update your apps. You have friend requests. You have likes. You have new followers. You name it. And so this is kind of similar to what spam used to be a couple of years ago, right? Because it's distracting you. It's bad for you. And you can argue that, push notification is not the same because it's pretty easy to turn off push notifications. But I still feel that it's a huge distraction. And at times, it can also be a frustration. Here's why. There's actually a syndrome which refers to people mistakenly thinking that their phone is vibrating. They pull it out, and it's a false alarm. And what this tells me is that we are obsessed, as users, we are obsessed and frustrated by all these notifications. 9 out of 10 people are suffering from this syndrome. So in your next meeting, whenever push notifications comes up, and whoever in your team suggests that you should send more push notifications through your app, just quote these statistics to convince him. OK, and now something else. Again, let's go back in time a little bit. A couple of years ago, many home pages contained a link, a very important link that people love to click. And that link was labeled skip intro. You remember that? That was a couple of years ago when most websites had some splash page or some flash intro animation right in front of the home page. And this had no value for users, right? This was just a roadblock. So we were roadblocking users to show some fancy animations. But that was not good for users. That was a roadblock. Again, luckily, we don't have flash animations, flash intros anymore. But we do have some roadblocks right now, a different kind of roadblocks. Imagine this scenario when you Google something, you arrive on a landing page, you start to read the landing page, and this is what happens. An overlay saying that you should chat with us, hey, you have a question. Or maybe you have a more aggressive one, like a huge overlay covering all the content that you want to read, saying that we have a newsletter you should sign up for, we have some ebooks to download. These are actually roadblocks for users, because some may convert with this, others may find it very distracting, because it's covering the content. It's a roadblock. So when it comes to pushing your messages, pushing your business messages to your users, you need to make sure that you're not only tracking how successful these overlays, how successful the emails, how successful the push notifications are, but you should also track how distracting it is for the majority of your users. Okay? And so I was talking about technology a little bit, but I would like to pitch a few ideas to you here. So I was just talking about business kind of roadblocks. The thing is that we have technological roadblocks too. Again, consider this scenario. You pull out your phone, you want to use an app, and it says it won't be run until you update it. So you go to the App Store, enter your password, wait for downloading, wait for the app to be installed, and then you start the app. That's a technological roadblock for you as a user, right? An even worse scenario is if you sit in your car and the car refuses to go because it's being updated. So you can't go out from your garage. It can be pretty annoying, right? Considering the actual context. You want to go from point A to point B, and the car is not running. It's updating. It's crazy. And so this kind of roadblock is unfortunately pretty common in some Internet of Things devices. And this is something I'd like to refer back to Claire's speech earlier this morning. So you have to make sure that if you're offering some functionality, it has some great value for the users, and it doesn't have some extra steps in the process. Like, let's say you have a smart device at home, like a smart scale. Instead of stepping on the scale and reading the value, oftentimes the process is like you have to pull out your phone, you have to enter your passcode, you have to find the app, you have to update the app, you have to turn on Bluetooth, you have to sync the two devices together, you have to authenticate into Facebook, you have to allow the app to post messages in the name of you. So again, if these extra steps take more effort from the user's end than what value they provide, then it's a bad experience. Then it's not technology serving users, it's users serving technology, which is a bad direction. And so the point here is that technology should solve the problems of the users, and it shouldn't cause new problems. Think about the autocorrect. I think it has improved a lot recently. But again, if you Google it, if you Google autocorrect fails, stuff like that, you are going to find like 1 million images, 1 million examples where the autocorrect didn't actually help users make less mistakes. It just screwed up things even more. And that's annoying too. So I think when it comes to technology, when it comes to innovations, when it comes to new ideas, the key questions that you need to ask yourself is that, are you adding a new feature to the product because you really believe that this is what people need, because you really believe that this is going to solve the people's problems? Or are you adding a feature because you feel that it's fancy, it's cool, it sounds great? Like this, take this example. That's a smart wine bottle. So if you're designing a smart wine bottle, you need to ask yourself, am I really going to put a touchscreen to the wine bottle because I feel that this is a huge problem for users, because I feel that people want this? Or am I adding a touchscreen to the wine bottle because I feel that it sounds so great and I want to build this, and I want to say that I have a smart wine bottle? I don't know the answer. Maybe you do. You go. And so I have another example on the other side, which I really like to quote. So there was an invention, a new technology, let's say, in 2014. That was a new invention, and that became a huge success in a very short time. And it was not smart at all. Yet it was connected to technology, but not in a smart way. And that's the selfie stick. And the reason why the selfie stick is was pretty popular, okay, it's cheap on one hand, but still, is because it didn't want to do something really technical. It didn't want to be really smart. It just recognized that people have a serious problem. Group selfies, right? People wanted longer arms. And so to solve this problem, the designer of this thing didn't come up with some huge technological solution. He just wanted to go with the simplest solution that can efficiently solve people's problem. And that's basically the point when it comes to designing new products. So you as designers, UX people, you have to fall in love with the problems that the user have. You have to focus on people's problem. And you should forget about technology for a little while when you are designing things, OK? So to sum this whole presentation up a little bit, we as UX designers are working in an ever-changing environment. And we need to accept it. And it's not always easy. So what we can do in this ever-changing environment is that whatever happens, we just need to focus on users, and we need to keep focusing on our users. And with our users in mind, with our users' needs and problems in mind, sometimes we have to speak up. Sometimes we have to question what business stakeholders and technology stakeholders say, and we have to object it sometimes. And so we have to work these people together very hard to make sure that we can together find the balance. And if you find that balance, you need to keep that balance. And if you find that balance, if you keep that balance, then you can reach to the point where you can actually and confidentially say you're working on products that people are going to love. Thank you very much. If you have right now any questions, fine. Otherwise, just grab me for a coffee and then we can talk. OK? Thank you very much.